If your team keeps throwing around terms like 508 compliant, WCAG compliant, ADA compliant, but nobody fully comprehensively actually understands what that means, then you're not alone. Because in accessibility conversations, many times people use this terminology interchangeably, and it doesn't really always mean the same thing. And if you work in government, education, procurement, or the creation of digital content for public, then a lack of understanding between these different terminologies could create a real risk for your organization. In this video, I'm going to break down what 508, WCAG, and ADA is in plain English. That way, you can better understand and maybe even help your team understand how each of these specific terminologies and the details wrapped up inside of them impact your organization, and more importantly, the requirements behind making sure that you're compliant in each of these categories. We're going to go over what each one is, who it actually applies to, and how they all fit together in real life. And before I get to that, I want to tell you a quick story. I was recently at the NASPO Value Point Procurement Contracting Conference in Orlando, Florida. One of the participants came up to our booth and they said, "Hey, I see you're on the contract for language services and ADA, WCAG, and 508 compliance. That's great. So do you guys come and install wheelchair ramps for people for home access?" And I was like, we need to have a little bit of maybe an education session here on exactly what each one of those means so that you can understand what we do. In fact, we don't come install any hardware. Our company works completely in the digital content or online production of materials that are consumed end users for government and state, local, other public entities. So in that moment, we had an opportunity to have a conversation about what that actually means and how that applies not only in the building ramps for people who utilize wheelchairs and such, but also the requirement for public procurement agencies to be able to understand what and when the correct type of ADA or 508 or WCAG compliance is required in what scenario. That was just a quick story. It was kind of funny. Maybe it's not funny for you because it's kind of contracting jargon stuff, but anyhow, that helped us to be able to educate a potential client and be able to help them more comprehensively understand what is required in the creation or the facilitation in the world of accessibility. If you don't know who I am by now, my name is Jason Ellinger and I'm the owner of Taika Translations. At Taika, we support governments, school districts, healthcare facilities, you name it, any kind of social sector organization that works with other humans. We work with them and help them to do their jobs and do their jobs really well. We provide a plethora of accessibility related and communications related support, including translation, interpretation, captioning, and accessible document creation. One thing we see very often is that accessibility gets messy really fast when people mix up the frameworks or mix up, worse, the legal frameworks that pertain to each of the categories. And that mainly surrounds the technical standards and the practical implications surrounding them. So this video is for you if you work in procurement, communications, compliance, IT, digital production of anything, or the program management around these items. Probably a good number of people out there. Also, if you want a clear understanding of what accessibility requirements mean for your team. Before we jump into this video, I do have to say this is for educational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice for your organization. Accessibility requirements can vary depending on entity type, jurisdiction, funding, and procurement rules. And more than that, the specific type of digital content involved. Always review your current contracts and legal regulations for the processing or compliance. So always review your internal legal documents, if there are any, around the instructions for the procurement and compliancy of the content you're working with before working on a live project. And we can help you with that, especially if you're not exactly sure where to search. All right, so really big picture here. These three accessibility terminologies are not the same. Let's start with the simplest of the three frameworks. Think of it this way. The ADA is the civil rights law. Section 508 is a federal accessibility requirement tied to information and communication technology that's mainly used by federal agencies. Now, WCAG is the technical accessibility standard people use to measure whether digital content is accessible. This distinction matters because here's one of the common mistakes. People often say, we need to be WCAG compliant, but WCAG by itself is not a law. WCAG is the technical benchmark that the laws and policies often point to. When someone says, well, we have to be WCAG compliant, the correct follow-up question is, under which legal policy or framework? So let's start with Section 508 compliance. Section 508 applies to federal agencies and requires their information and communication technology to be accessible. That includes things like websites, software, electronic documents, kiosks, and other ICT used, produced, developed, or maintained by the federal government. On section 508.gov, the federal guidance explains that electronic content must conform to WCAG 2.0 level A and AA, with some limited exception. And that even one applicable failed success criterion means that that content or that site or that digital whatever does not conform. So when somebody actually says, well, we need this to be 508 compliant, what they usually mean is the digital content or technology needs to meet the accessibility requirements that federal agents are held to under the Section 508 compliancy regulation. Now, that is especially important in federal contracting, federal grant environments, federal facing content of any kind, and the procurement of any digital goods for any use whatsoever by the federal government. Now, let's talk about ADA. The ADA is a broader theme here. It's a civil rights law that prohibits disability discrimination in different contexts. For digital accessibility, one major development is the Department of Justice's rule for Title II, which covers state and local government. And it sets the technical requirement for accessibility and accessible web content and all mobile apps. ADA.gov further explains that this rule, which was published in 2024, applies to states, local governments, online services, programs, and all their activities. And here's the key takeaway for this one. Under that rule, public entities must meet WCAG 2.1 level AA for covered web content and mobile apps. ADA.gov's implementation guidance states that compliance dates are April 2026, this year, and actually this month, if you're seeing this video in April, or by April 2027, depending on the size of the entity. Now you can already see why some of this terminology gets pretty confusing pretty fast. Section 508 points to WCAG level A and AA. The newer ADA title ruling on the web and app environment, that rule, it points to WCAG 2.1 AA for state and local government standards. Those are all related, but they're not identical. Let's talk about what WCAG actually is itself. WCAG stands for Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, shortened to WCAG. This is published by W3C and gives testable success criterion for making digital content more accessible. WCAG is built around 4 core principles, and those are: content must be perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. These are often shortened to POUR, or POUR. WCAG within itself has conformance levels. So we have A, AA, and AAA. In most public sector and enterprise contexts, the AA level is the one that people mostly focus on. W3C's current recommendation is WCAG 2.2, and W3C explicitly says that content conforming to WCAG 2.2 also conforms to WCAG 2.1 and 2.0, while improving accessibility for current web experiences. W3C also recommends using the most current version of WCAG when developing or updating accessibility policies within your organization. So from a practical planning standpoint, a law or contract may still refer to an earlier version of WCAG, but your implementation strategy may still want to target the newer one. All right, I promised I'd try to bring this all to plain English here at the end. So here's the cleanest real-world example I can give you. ADA tells public sector entities they must provide accessible related services. ADA tells public sector entities that they must provide accessible services to the grand population. Section 508 tells federal agencies what accessibility standard applies to their ICT. And WCAG gives the technical criteria teams must use to design, test, remediate, and implement when making their documents accessible, or any other media for that matter. So if you work in a federal government environment, Section 508 is a central reference point for you. If you are in a state or local government environment, then the ADA Title II web app ruling is a central reference point for your organization. And in the vendor environment, WCAG is the technical language that you use to build and prove your accessibility. This is why accessibility is not just a legal issue, because it falls into the area of design, because it's also a design issue. It's a content production issue. It's a media production issue, it's a QA issue, and often a language access issue as well. Because your public sector site could still fail accessibility not only through the coding, but also through the bad PDFs that are posted online, the inaccessible content that you have created and posted. I see a lot of entities out there now, a lot of public sector entities out there utilizing AI to help them generate content for their site. And when they post that on their sites, it's not ADA compliant, which it must be to be able to be in compliance with all of the regulations regarding this issue for public entities. And this gets down to the nitty gritty, even missing captions, unclear link text, the wrong use of coloring inside the site itself, images without alternative text, or inaccessible or untranslated content workflows. One of the biggest mistakes that I see organizations make is that they treat accessibility like a badge. Once they earned it, they got the badge, got the t-shirt, and they're done. Accessibility is not that. Accessibility doesn't work like that. Well, we fixed the homepage in 2024. It's now WCAG compliant. This is an operational discipline that has to be maintained throughout the life cycle of any digital media of any type or any changes in the website that ever happen for the life of that item. Because every single time anyone on your team, whether it's graphic design, web developer, app creator, or any procurement personnel or marketing person, uploads a PDF, a board jacket, a flyer, a training video, an application form, or any public notice, you are either preserving accessibility or you're breaking the rule yet again. Any new piece of content must conform. And that's why strong accessibility programs are not only built on audits, they're built on workflows that work with your team. So if your organization is trying to get clear on this, you need to ask these 4 questions. What type of entity are we, first of all? Are you a federal agency? Are you a state or local agency? Are you a school district, nonprofit, maybe you're a contractor? Second question, which legal policy or framework applies to us? 508, ADA, state rule, grant contract, grant requirement, or even grant conditions in those contracts. Third question, which digital assets are we even talking about? Is it the website? Is it the apps? Is it the PDFs on the website? Are there forms, videos, or software in this environment? What is it? And which WCAG target are we using operationally for our team? Is it the minimum legal baseline, or is it the newer target that your organization is choosing to build towards? Because sooner or later, it's going to be the requirement. That one conversation clears up a huge amount of confusion. And if you really want to get clear in this area, reach out to my team. We can help you. We'll help you for free. And if you need help with this conversation, contact my team. We will be more than happy to help you answer those 4 questions. You can visit our website at taikatranslations.com, or you can contact us at sales@taikatranslations.com, and we'll schedule a meeting where we can help you work through those questions to make sure you don't get in any trouble with your compliance. All right, so here's a recap of everything I've talked about in this video. Hopefully this makes it concise and actionable for you. Section 508 is a federal accessibility requirement for ICT used by federal agencies, and it references WCAG currently 2.0, level A and level AA. The ADA is the civil rights law, and under the recent Department of Justice Title II ruling, state and local governments have specific web and mobile accessibility requirements tied to WCAG 2.1 and level AA, with compliance timelines in April 2026 or 2027, depending on the entity size. WCAG is the technical standard that gives teams the actual criteria accessible digital content. And W3C currently recommends WCAG 2.2 as the most current target for future-facing accessibility content work. So once you separate the law, the scope, and the technical standard, the whole conversation becomes much easier to manage. If this helped, you may also want to watch our next video in this series. It's called WCAG A and AA, what actually matters in practice. That one is about what teams usually miss when they think accessibility is mostly about alternative text or color contrast. If you work in procurement, communications, education, or public sector digital content, like this video and subscribe to the channel, because we'll be producing more practical accessibility content that helps you understand how to process, create, and ensure the accuracy of your accessibility publication. And what I would like to hear from you is, and you can drop this in the comments below, what accessibility term gets most often confused in your organization? If you would drop me a comment, I would greatly appreciate that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.